Hi, everyone, and welcome into Conversations with Dr. Charles Ackle. Have you wondered if, as you're getting older, are you staying healthy? Well, there could be implications involved in that include your immune system, and that's what we're going to talk about today in our Conversations with Dr. Charles. Hi, my name is Pat Bryant, and this esteemed-looking gentleman here on the screen as well is Dr. Charles Ackle. If you've joined us previously, be sure to click the subscription button below. That'll let you know when new material is being developed here, and it'll allow you to tie into these videos at your leisure. If you've not seen Dr. Charles before, Charles, you have such a great resume and background. You're the Chief Medical Officer here at Emmy, and you're a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in London, and you were trained in medicine at Guy's Hospital, also in London, and you spent decades working in general surgery, transplantation surgery, and immunology. And that last part is what really sparked what has now been almost a lifetime of pursuit in understanding the immune system, immunology, and a variety of different approaches to better health. And our focus here in these conversations is really on gut health, immune health, and all of the various things which, even though those are two distinct parts of the body, they have a huge impact on everything else. So Charles, once again, welcome in. So excited to spend some time with you today.
Hi, Pat. Yes, it's always a pleasure. And I have to say, we always choose quite complex subjects, but I love to try and keep it simple, mainly because it's the only way I understand it. I think you can get really complicated. And as I get older, I think just keep it simple. It works
Well, that's
well.
a gift to the rest of us who would never be able to understand it otherwise. So Charles,
Well,
we talked a little bit about aging, and it's a simple fact. None of us are getting out of here alive, right?
absolutely.
So we're all aging. If you've just been born, guess what? You're aging. If you're my age, your age, and others, you're aging too. But not everyone ages the same way or in the same quality.
Right.
So help us understand just I guess, the concept of aging, and then let's start getting into implications from having a healthy body and particularly immune system and gut.
Well, it's a massive subject, as you can imagine, and every billionaire on the planet wants to live forever and has thrown money at trying to understand this, never mind Joe Ordinary. But the whole aging process is very complicated. There are theories started with things like your cells could only multiply so many times. It was called the Hayflick limit, and your cells could multiply 70, 80, 100 times, whatever it was, and then they died out of senescence. There are concepts that little teeny tiny things don't live very long, and elephants live a long time, and whales, and it's all to do with the number of heartbeats you have and stuff like that. And the trouble is there's always something to break the rules. And one of the most interesting beasts that does that is a thing incredibly ugly, bless it, mole rat. It's called the mole rat, and it's a hairless, blind little creature.
We may have to find one and superimpose it here on the screen.
But yeah, you're going to have difficulty finding a sort of cute thing. It'll never make a cute teddy bear kid's toy, but the mole rat deserves a place because it's so brilliant. It has an incredibly long lifetime, and scientists have looked at it to find out why. And one of the things it seems to do very, very well is to control inflammation. It controls inflammation by whatever means. We won't go into the minutiae of detail, but it has a very clever way of dealing with inflammation and not letting its cells become old. They don't undergo senescence and gold, and then they die. So the mole rat's actually an important thing to learn about, and tells us a lot about immunology. And of course, the basis of our survival is immunology. Those of you, and you've heard me say this before about Marvel comics and things, creatures like Wolverine, who most of our listeners will know about.
Have a new movie out right now.
Yeah, exactly. He's got this healing factor, so you can shoot him, and his body heals in seconds. And I suppose the immune system is a much slower version. And by the way, don't try this at home, kids, type thing, but it's much slower. So if you cut yourself or you break a bone, it heals. We have healing factor. It just takes a little longer. What is it? The impossible we do at once. Miracles just take a bit longer. And this healing factor is all down to the immune system. So the immune system is the yin and yang. It is the destructive component, because if a bug tries to get into your body, or a cancer, or whatever it is, it will attack and annihilate it. On the other hand, it reconstructs. It has the reconstructive power of healing, and it will rebuild your skin and your bones and your liver. I mean, I've done it. You can cut out up to 75-80% of your liver, and within a few weeks, the liver will regenerate. I mean, it's fantastic. Yeah. So that's all down to immunity. Equally, as I said, talk about livers. If you get hyperimmune reaction in a liver transplant, this big several pound organ will be smashed to bits by the immune system within 18 hours. I mean, it is the power of the system's fantastic. So we come back to aging. The whole point about the aging process is that the immune system will clean the things up, will tidy it up, will reconstruct, will defend it. And the better the immune system, the better the chances of having a good, and more importantly, a healthy life. Because I suspect most people listening on this channel, they don't want to live forever just to be sitting as with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's in a thing for 200 years. I mean, it's not what you want. What you want to have is a healthy, good brain, do the crossword, television, whatever you want to do, read your books, write your books.
It's like the old country song, Charles. It says, I want to go to heaven. I just don't want to go tonight.
Exactly. So there you go. It's all about quality of life. And therefore, it comes back to the quality of your immune system. And as we get older, the immune system goes off a bit like an old computer disk. You get corruption in the software, and eventually that translates into degradation of the processes in your computer, and you then clog up and the thing crashes, and that's the end of it. So what we need is something that keeps the immune system in good tune. It keeps it in repair. And there are certain things that you can do to help. Now, there are a lot of things you can do to make it worse. So we'll do those first. So, the first thing to do is to go and start smoking. We know that it's a no-brainer. Anybody who smokes, they look old, they get old, and they get cancer, and they heart disease, and they age. There's no question.
Such a devastating habit.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, and I think generally most people have come, worked out. However, air pollution, climate change, and things are things that do have similar effect, but there's not a lot that Joe Ordinary like you and me can do about it, other than make our voices heard and do our little bit. But we can't change the whole planet as an individual, but we can try and group together to do that. The second thing is things like diet. If you eat the wrong kind of food and you overeat and you become very, very overloaded and obese, that increases your risk to cancer, increases your risk for heart disease, for diabetes. So diabetics will age older very quickly. So again, diet and things like that are something to be taken care of. Stress, of course, if you don't get any sleep, you're up all night, you're running around like a lunatic, that's not going to do you any good. And the same with mad exercises. People who do extraordinary amounts of crazy exercise don't actually do themselves any good. You don't see many old, long-term super athletes.
Yes.
You see, but the people who do a gentle walk, and especially go out in the woods or on the, mix with nature and get
staying active and moving, right? And there, you've talked previously about, it's not just the stress element of getting out in nature, but there are beneficial elements of literally rubbing up against nature.
Absolutely. And we know this from childhood where, if you bring nature to the kids, but even to their playground, and you bring trees and mud and stuff and put it in the
Right.
playground, kids are far healthier for that very benefit. Other thing are things like viral infections that you get. HIV/AIDS is a huge example of accelerated aging because your immune
Mm.
system gets trashed.
Mm.
And that then induces an aging process. And so we know from bad immunity for all sorts of reasons. We also know about the relationship to the microbiome. Now that, and we come back to nature and all that,
Yes.
that if you have a good microbiome, you're going to do well. And a recent study showed that if you have a look at centenarians, people of 100 years old or
Yes.
more, you look at their microbiome, they've got the microbiome of somebody age 20. And they've managed to preserve it, whereas other people are not doing so well, have an old microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
So the microbiome is something you can do something about. Now, of course, all the snake oil merchants will run out and say, well, you've got to have this bug and that bug and this other bug and buy this from us. And I just don't buy this. I think it's all about diversity.
Right.
It's about variety being the spice of life.
Now,
So
Charles, there may be people who are watching us for the first time. So can you just give a 30-second hit on the microbiome? Because people will at first go, wait a minute, I have stuff on me. Yes, you do, and you want more. So can you explain microbiome kind of quickly?
Oh, the microbiome are the bugs and creatures, if you like, because it's not just bacteria. There are viruses and all sorts of other things that live in, on, and around you. And when I say in, they live inside your gut and lungs, but they also live in the tissues. Incredibly, we always thought that the body was sterile. There are bugs everywhere, and most of them are vital for your health and survival. They're much more important. We know this from overuse of antibiotics, for example. You can have a lot of damage. So the microbiome, the bugs that are in your gut and around you and the interaction with them is so important to tuning your immunity. And so, we've gone, look at some of the other programs that we've done. But I think everybody out there now has got the message that actually you need to have a good relationship with the bugs in, on, and around you.
And the question is, what do I do about that?
Well, then
how do I do that?
Yeah, well, there are two things to do. One is that you go and expose yourself to these bugs, and if you're a child, you go out and play in the mud and in the forests and the woods. You have a dirty older brother who is really good value at bringing bugs into the house. You keep a dog or a pet; they amazingly are quite useful. You live in a community where natural things occur and material isn't used to kill bugs. So if you live in an Amish community, for example, your risk of getting asthma is a lot less than an ordinary community. That's just one example.
And Charles, our society has gone completely in the opposite direction.
Yeah, concrete jungles are crazy, and overuse of antibiotics, overuse of
hand
cleaning equipment, and is not necessarily a good thing. That's not to say that you should go and roll around in dog poo because
as you said to me, don't go licking doorknobs at hospitals, but you need exposure.
You need, and you need it to the friendly bugs, the majority of which are friendly. So a walk in the woods, running in the mud, eating. Now, so we now come back to food and feeding your microbiome. So your microbiome is like a very special garden. It needs to be maintained. And maintaining it means feeding it fertilizer, which is where, prebiotics and all these other things that we talk about. So eating fiber and bran and psyllium husk and all these other things are important to feed the organisms. But you also need to have the fresh organisms. And one of the tricks that we've talked about is that you should be juicing the right kind of material every day. Well, you have to juice every day, but drink some of it every day. And my trick is I go around and to our local village shop and I get 15 or 20 different ingredients and fruits and vegetables, and I whether it's a bit of apple, some pear,
Yes.
ginger,
Carrots,
apple cider
celery.
vinegar, carrots, parsnips, root vegetables of one sort or another, blueberries. I mean, you can make it, and it tastes like honey. Put some local honey in, put some
Yes.
local yogurt or kefir, and make it taste nice. And these all contain a whole variety of bugs that help you. But as we've also said, this is all very well. And by the way, the other thing to do is to avoid ultra processed food. Now, all of our food is processed to some degree. If you think about it, if you go and grill a steak, that's processed food. So
Right.
it's not all bad. It's this
It's
ultra
ultra
processed,
single ingredient foods, the best you
correct,
can get.
the
Yeah.
trans fats and
Yes.
all these E numbers that induce all sorts of problems. There's the yellow tartrazine, for example, the yellow dye makes kids go bananas. I mean, they go crazy because of the effect of these agents. So that's an extreme version. But here we are shoving all sorts of rubbish into ourselves, and it doesn't do the bacteria and other bugs any good. But anyway, you work on that and avoid those ultra processed foods, look after your diet. And as with any orchestra, any other, broad thing, you need something that conducts it. You need an adjuvant, an immunoadjuvant that binds it all together and integrates the signal. And that's where things like IMI are so important. I mean, there are other things that can do it, worms, but I think getting people to eat worms
that might be tough.
Yeah, not a good idea. And certain infections that may not be so good for you. But IMI is really straightforward and acts as this wonderful adjuvant to help. And we'll be talking probably in another program about mushrooms and the effect of adjuvants. I can explain that in a bit more detail.
And part of what we've discussed previously, and you just mentioned it a moment ago, is people say, okay, I've heard that I should be out in nature and I should be, as you said, walking barefoot in mud and let the kids play outside, let them play in the dirt. Connect that back to IMI, because that's really the essence of what IMI is reintroducing back into our diets and into our bodies, correct?
Absolutely. And if you go to the Eden Project in Cornwall in England, the Eden Project is a celebration, if you like, of the planet and the climate and everything else. And there's a plaque that talks about mud. And one of the main components of mud that they push is mycobacteria or mycolysibacteria, of which IMI is a prime example. So these organisms like IMI, brothers and sisters to IMI, are present in mud all over the world. And we've lost this exposure to these environmental saprophytes, as we call them. They're in your environment. We're not getting access to them. Things are too clean. And what happens with these organisms is they don't colonize. It's not like other bugs where you have a constant supply.
It's not like a probiotic.
You poop them out. Yeah, you poop them out every day. And so you need to keep replenishing them. It's like oxygen. You take oxygen in and you carbon dioxide comes out, but you've got to get fresh oxygen in all the time. The same applies to IMI and its sister organisms. You have to keep replenishing the supply on a daily basis. Otherwise, you run out. Unlike lactobacilli of one sort or another, where they will continue to grow in your garden. But you need to put in the fertilizer, if you like, of IMI, which makes all these organisms work so much better. And we think that's critical for mental health, never mind, immune health. We've concentrated on mental health, but of course, that's stress. And what's one of the biggest factors in aging? Stress of whatever kind. Chronic inflammation, bad.
Absolutely.
Stress, bad. Cancer.
And all things, as you said earlier, that conductor, that orchestra conductor that's telling the immune system, hey, that's bad, go fight it. That's not bad, leave it alone. That's what IMI can provide inside of the system.
Correct. It's exactly right. I mean, the activity, and we know a lot about the science of these things from, if you want to, so-called toll receptors and nod receptors and the effects on the various signaling molecules. And just to now, the latest data that's come through on animal models is that the thing that's very strongly associated with certainly aging is a signaling molecule called interleukin 11.
Hmm.
IL-11. Again, that's been published. You may have read about it in the papers. And the animals that have high levels of interleukin 11, this is a derivative or a sister drug to what's called TNF alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha, which is as nasty as it sounds. And ages you. Now, if you block it, and there are certain drugs that will block these IL-11 already available but not licensed, obviously, these animals will live 25% longer for that block. There are other drugs that will do it. There's particular ones, things like rapamycin, which is a kind of antibiotic. Again, we can talk. It's great fun, rapamycin, but toxic. So you've got to be careful, and it's all dose dependent. You must be very careful, and you shouldn't be using it without
overdose quickly.
The other one's metformin. Metformin is a drug that's used for overweight people with diabetes, but it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory agent. It's been tried for cancer. It seems to have an effect on aging. The problem with metformin is dosing. You need a massive dose for it to have really any effect. And translating that dose from the laboratory and laboratory animals to humans, it's too much. You'd have to be taking by the bucketful. But it tells you something about sugar and diet control, that there is the story about fasting, about keeping calories under control. Again, that helps to improve.
And with fasting, autophagy and things of that sort that are beneficial.
Exactly. And of course, these new agents, which everybody now is abusing in a way for weight loss, the Wegovy's and the Jardiance, these two different sugar-acting agents, if you like, the side effects of these are really very beneficial. Some of them are not so good, but the effect on heart disease and longevity seems to be a factor. So it's all about energy production and how the immune system works. So at the end of the day, it's energy that drives it. It's all about immunity at the bottom line, and that's why IMI is so important.
And that seems to be the theme. We've got about a minute left or so. You know, if I boiled down what you've said today, there's some things that I think to all of us, just as regular consumers, are obvious. I need to eat better. I need to move. I need to get outside and play. The thing that you've talked about that I think is just not as well known is the immune system is the foundation of health. And so, hey, I may or may not be in the lucky gene club to where I smoke and drink and eat terribly and I still live to be 100. Those are few and far between. But what I heard you say is it's not only quantity of life, but quality of life in that quantity of life. And the immune system is the basis and the foundation for that. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely right. I mean, you know, if you've got a healthy immune system, you just feel good. And the obvious, easy example of that is if you've got a really, really nasty viral infection, it just influenza, you feel terrible. Why? Right. Because you've got all this rubbish in your system, and the immune system is trying to fight the flu, and you feel terrible. When you feel healthy and well, your immune system's in great condition.
Right.
And that's what we all want. Yeah, we take it for granted. And that's why silly things like smoking and just lazing about, you know, overeating, these just not going to, they're going to catch up with you eventually. No question.
And as we've said previously, please hear this if you're watching the video. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic capsule. IMI is not a magic capsule, but what IMI does do is it acts as that conductor, that immunoadjuvant, that broker, as you've said in prior videos, Charles, that really equips and enables the immune system to do its job, which is to keep you healthy, and depending on the number of years you have, to give you better quality years as we all age.
Yeah. And if you look at some of the reports of people who've been on it, I mean, we've obviously got you know, the original cancer data where the quality of life signals with the mycobacteria is outstanding. But if you look on the IMI website and you see how people benefit, not everybody benefits because not everybody needs it. They probably, if you've got a healthy, you know, lifestyle and you're doing all the right things, you probably don't need it. But the great majority of us don't. I mean, if you look at the incidence of long COVID and all these other illnesses and stress-related conditions that are out there, It's scary.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who need help. I mean, maybe 30% of the population. It's not 100% by any means. So give
Yes.
it a go. Buy
Absolutely.
a ticket, as they say in the lot of life.
Can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket.
Buy a ticket.
Well, Charles, it is as always, it was great to have a conversation with you again today. And if you're watching this and if you've enjoyed this, we invite you, be sure to click on the subscribe button below. It'll tell you when there's new video information. You can come right back here and watch it and share it with your friends. We'd love for you to go to emmy.co, that's emmy.co, not com, emmy.co, and learn more about Emmy, learn more about what it is, the science, the background, all that information. And we invite you that if you'd love to have a healthy immune system and support your immune system with something like Emmy, that you would take advantage of that. So once again, Charles, thank you. And we look forward to seeing all of you on a future conversation with Dr. Charles.